All right. How's everybody doing after lunch? All right. I've sat over here all morning and I figured out I don't have no business speaking at this conference. The four guys that went before me are phenomenal instructors, phenomenal firemen, and even better men. Uh, I'm going to give you something a little bit different for after lunch. So far today, we've had a bunch of taking care of yourselves, motivation, culture, mindset, leadership, all that stuff, which is something we obviously all need. Um, but I'm going to throw some engine work at us, right? Every fire department in America, with maybe the exception of one, I think Berwyn Heights in PG County, No Hose Nation, that has a rescue and a tiller truck, are probably the only fire department in the country that do not have an engine. So we're going to talk a little engine work this afternoon. Um, I guess I want to tell y'all thank you for being here, for coming and giving up your day or your week or however long you're here. I was humbled when Shane asked me to present here. I was really even more humbled, whatever it's been now, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, when Shane invited me down to Dalton to be a part of Bears of the Oath 3, or as we all know it now as family reunions. So I've been lucky enough to travel and do some stuff with them across the South, and you will not find a better group of instructors. So what is Long Lines for the Win all about? Well, most of us are from the South, I would say. The majority of us are from the Southeast. In my travels of teaching and stuff, I've seen that most fire departments are cross-lay based, right? We stretch cross-lays. Everybody runs cross-lays because they're easy, right? We step out of the rig, I turn, and my cross-lays are right there. Well, what do you do in the instances where a cross-lay is not enough? Most everybody runs a standardized length. Hey, we run all 200-foot cross-lays. My fire department generally runs like a 200 on the front and a 250 on the rear, however it is. But we've got several places that's not enough. So that's where this class came from. So I hope that you get something out of this. This is kind of a warm-up session for me on this. I'm presenting this class in Maryland almost a month from now. It'll be a little bit longer of a version than this. So this is kind of a warm-up for it. Before I go too much further, I'll introduce myself. My name is Daniel Nelms. Everybody calls me Chunk, except for my mama and my wife, and most of y'all aren't pretty enough to call me Daniel, so Chunk will work. I work for the city of Nashville. I've been there almost 15 years. I'm currently assigned to a truck. Yes, a truck guy teaching engine stuff, I know. I'm currently assigned to a truck on the far east side of the city, 32 truck. We're a middle of the road call volume truck company. I think last year we made about just shy of 2,000 runs, probably somewhere around 80 working fires. So decent truck to work on. So I've got the big city side to me. I started in a small volunteer rural fire department. The biggest intersection we had in our town was a four-way stop with a flashing light. And it was that way until about 17 years ago. So it's podunk as it gets. So if you are a small town, single person on a piece of fire equipment, I can relate to you. At least I feel like I can. If you're big city, metropolitan, I can relate to you and can get anywhere in the middle there, I hope. So outside of Nashville, my family owns a training company. We travel everywhere we can to teach. Probably all the old heads in here have seen my brother's YouTube videos, the original YouTube sensation, his peaked roof ventilation. If you have seen the video, Trey will be here tomorrow through the week. If you have seen the video, please come up and say something to him. He gets so embarrassed about it, and like it pumps us up, the rest of us that teach with him. We keep count with how many people, and he's like, dude, I wish y'all would leave me alone. So please say something to him if you get a chance. All right. So Tom started the day. Phenomenal presentation, brother. And he had a list similar to what I have, right? These are my senior men, my mentors, the people that I know that I can call, that I can lean on, that I can listen to a podcast or something that they've done, and pick something up. These are the people that will call me on my crap whenever I'm dragging, or will lift me up when I truly need it. Find you a group of mentors, of senior men. Most of these people on this list are here this week. Some of them aren't. A couple guys, Cody Trestrell, David Brogman, some of those guys are guys that I worked with or have taught at conferences with or whatever. But this is my big list. Outside of that, these two guys right here are without a doubt the biggest senior men that I've ever had. Without them, I wouldn't do anything that I do in this job. The guy on your far right is my dad. He worked 37 years for the Nashville Fire Department, retired as a district chief. After he retired, he continued to travel and teach. He continued to read magazines, read books, go to all the conferences and all that stuff. I think we did the math after he passed, and he had like 54 years dedicated to the fire service. So he laid the foundation for our family. And then, of course, the guy in the middle being my brother, who was like having a second dad. He's 15 years older than me. He took me in my first fire. He took me to my first pin in. He took like all the first that you get. That was the guy who did it. These were my guys. These were my heroes. Find you some people like this, please. But these are my guys too, right? Obviously, when this conference started to get advertised, Shane advertised it as a conference like no other. There's no other conference out there that's like this. Shane started the day before Tom's speech or Tom's lecture, and I got a picture of him from over here with the cross in the background, and I thought, man, how cool is it to be at a fire conference that's faith-based, that people are talking about what God is doing in their life and all that. And it's funny how God works on you. Yesterday, before I drove down, I went to church with my family, and we started a new series called More Than. And this was the scripture that we studied. So 1 Samuel 18 is about Jonathan and David and the connection that they had, right? Jonathan was King Saul's son, was the heir to the throne. When Jonathan and David met, like the passion, the love that they had was like unmatched for anything. I believe the Bible says that they were intertwined with each other. These folks out here, these instructors that are here this week, have made me feel like that since day one. And they will make every one of you feel like that this week. So you've heard it from all of us. The best of the best are here. They might not be the most well-known or whatever. The best of the best instructors are here this week. Reach out to them, connect to them, intertwine with them, okay? For all you instructors, I want to tell you thank you. I love every one of you. All right, now real deal. All right, so Andy Fredericks, anybody who's been in the fire service has heard Andy Fredericks and has heard this quote. Of course, I know it's a little bit reworded, but as the first line goes, so goes the fire. And I think that's spot on, right? If the first crew doesn't stretch the appropriate line, the right size, proper placement, all that stuff, then the fire's probably going to go to hell. So for me, aggressive firefighting is the solution, not the problem, right? We, as the American Fire Service, need to be more aggressive. And I think we're getting there, but I think we still have a ways to go. And I know for a lot of places, aggressive is a 4-letter word, right? It's a cuss word. We don't say aggressive because it might hurt somebody's feelings. But for me, aggressive is the solution, not the problem. Aggressive firefighting is about making decisions and being confident in those decisions. Our goal as firefighters, as senior men, as company officers, as chief officers should be to create thinking firefighters. People who don't have to have their hand held, who don't have to be coddled, people who can make a decision and be confident in the decision they make. Everything that we're going to go over in this, I stole from somebody else. I'll just be real with you. Beg, borrow, steal, right? I didn't come up with anything new here. Everything that we're going to go over is because of a failure that I had, right? We made a fire and It was a crappy stretch. I pulled up and I said, hey, I know this is it. And I stretched the line and I come up short. Like story of my life, coming up short. But we figured out a way to adapt and overcome, whether that's bundles, we created long lines, so on. So that's where this whole class come from, is our failures. Excuse me. For me, engine work is down and dirty, right? Setup is key. You have to have a war wagon. Your piece of equipment set up right. You've got the right attack package, the right hose, the right nozzles. Everything has to be set up. Your crew has to be on their game. Riding assignments, predetermined arrival assignments, all that stuff factors in. For engines, we have 3 main tasks. Water on the fire, search as you go, and I'm not talking about, hey, I'll move a line down this hallway and I'm going to stop while Kevin searches this bedroom. I mean, searching those ways, hallways, doorways, and stairways as I'm pushing this line into the fire, and then water supply. So those are our 3 main tasks that we focus on as an engine. 1.5 or 3 inch built up, and then 7 sections of 1 3/4 on top of it. So they're all bulk bed stretches. Don't use cross lays. They pull the 1 3/4 off until they need, break, connect it to a discharge. If it's longer than 350 feet, then it's already reduced down going into their 2.5. So options, again, same problem. Theirs was just flat loaded. The reason New York is so good at making the flat load work is the amount of time that they spend in their fire academy to make sure people understand, hey, if I grab these 3 folds, I have 50 feet of hose on my arm, or whatever it is. Hey, we'll put a whole engine company together. If everybody grabs 3 folds, that's 250 feet of hose that we're taking up. However it works from there. So they're so strict on how they teach that it worked for them. But that's not going to work for most of us. So I reached out to my buddy John Hall in St. Paul, Minnesota, and said, John, man, you're writing in all these magazines. What you got? And he says, man, we're running the St. Paul stacks. And I was like, all right, talk me through it. So 100-foot bundle on top, like this gentleman right here has, of 1 3/4, just rest on top. And then everything else is 2.5 loaded in 100-foot stacks with an ear at that 100-foot. Is that what y'all are running? So I was a big fan of it, and I actually wish Nashville would have went to it. But the same problem was people wanted to use the ear and just drag it for everything instead of taking time and flipping it and shouldering it for those longer stretches, moving upstairs and all that. So great setup. And I've got videos. Rutherford County, where I used to work, runs this, and have had great success with it. But it wasn't for us in Nashville. So we went to the Stinger load, which is out of the Northeast. I think DC kind of gets credit for coming up with it. Engine 4 in DC is the originators of this, and like it's all over the Northeast, that DC metro corridor, how everything works. This was what Engine 26 ran for a while. It's 300 feet of 2.5, all shoulder load set up. There's nothing connected to the discharge because we had 1 discharge on the rear to use for all our lines off the rear. So, hey, we tried it, and this is what everybody decided we liked. So this is kind of what our leader line looks like, and I guess I'll set the stage for this. And actually, I think Chief Nelms talks in this video, so.
This is the home of the leader line for engine companies. This used to be their Warren House apartment. You see, I'm walking through the first building, the Alpha building here, to get to the Delta building back here in the back. You got to walk through this building, past building F, to get a line in play. This is a common occurrence in some of our apartment complexes. No driveways, no parking lots, no access anywhere on the other sides of the building. So you see as I approach, and give us a look toward the Bravo side, going back toward the Delta side, same kind of thing. We get cut off here. There's another building, and there's also a huge drop off with no access. You see on the Charlie side, goes way down. The building itself, 3 in the rear, 2-story front, well beyond the capabilities of our 200 or 250 foot pre-connect. So what we're going to show you today is engine 6's set up for success on laying a long line. You can see here on their setup, everything's dead loaded because they got 2.5 connection point that they're using for 2 different lines. The one on the left is dedicated 2.5. The one to the right is the leader line. 150 foot of inch and 3/4, 150 foot of 2.5, 100 foot of 2.5. So the engineer is going to step up. He's going to grab the coupling. He's going to flip down, and he's going to make his connection to the discharge. The Nelms firefighter is going to step up and grab his bundle. This is 150 foot of inch and 3/4. Gets it about midway on his body, but he doesn't run away. He waits for the officer to grab his section, who has 150 foot of 2.5. So once they step there, he said they've got a tail in between them that's going to allow them to have some flexibility in movement. The officer elected to pick the Y up so it's not a tripping hazard or dragging on the ground. Engineer grabs his bundle and he calls the stretch. As they walk through, the line's easily going to play off his shoulder, which means he can negotiate obstacles, landscaping, bushes, whatever. He hollers tight, which lets the officer know it's going to come on in now, and the engineer can go back to the engine. Furthest he got away was 100 foot from the rig. Cap keeps walking. Things are playing off his shoulder. Once he gets to the point where his is going to come off, he'll yell tight to the firefighter, which is going to let him know that the hose is about to come off of his shoulder. All right, the firefighter knows that the fire is on the upper floor here, so he's going to keep advancing. So he's coming up the steps. Cap is catching corners for him. Still got hose on his shoulder, so it can play out as needed. Apartment 63 is where we're going. It's right here. He's going to dump his stack. Going to find his point to drag back. Flake the line out. You got to set up on the door based on the way it swings and where the apartment's going to be. Water, water, water. It calls for water. 400 foot leader line stretch with 1 fire company, 3 people.
So we put this line on engine 6. I'm on B shift. Don't hate on B shift. Forever our B shift was trash. Like whenever our B shift was formed, the A shift and the C shift assistant chief were able to come to the meeting. They left the B shift chief out and they went kickball teams. And the A shift and C shift chief picked everybody, and all the turds that were left got put on B shift. Today, we flip-flopped. A shift has all the turds, all the good people got promoted off of A shift and moved to B shift. So A shift and C shift were against putting this 400-foot line on the engine. This is stupid. We'll never use this. Why is this on our engine? Y'all are taking up space. You're wasting hose. We've got all this extra blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks after we filmed this video, we made a fire at what was Warren House. It's the Mandolin now, 441 Welshwood. Building D, the building that we stretched in, top floor. And if it hadn't have been for the 400-foot line, we wouldn't have put the fire out. It was like in the middle of the night. We almost did shift change on the scene. We came back. C shift had their head down. They're like, man, I'm glad y'all had that line on there. Can y'all teach us how to load it back? And now today, this is our standard across the city. Everybody Every engine that goes in service runs this 400-foot line. Well, then we had the people who said, hey, man, we've ate up all our 2.5. What do we do about our 2.5? So we went to a 2.5 long line, 300-foot, pre-connected off the rear. Chief Sparkman now will talk you through it. So pretty simple, right? Same premise as our leader line, just with 2.5. The other exception to this is it's a single stack instead of side by side like our leader line is. Same deal. We put this on there. A bunch of people argued. Nothing but success out of this line. Wrong coupling, but so the benefit of that load also, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, is it allows us to break and take what we need. If I don't need 300 feet, I just need that 150. I grab from the nozzle up as the nozzle firefighter, step forward. When it hits me in my butt, my driver, my officer, whoever it is, disconnects, and then they can connect to that rear discharge. If we need to take it up a hill to the first new engine, however it is, that gives us that option for all that stuff. Same thing with the leader line setup. Hey, we only need 300 feet of it. Okay, let's stretch 300 feet of it, break it, and go from there. So we've got our long lines. These are everything that we have. This is what we're running in Nashville. It's the same hose load. One is loaded with 1 3/4 integrated. Most everybody has gone away from the gated Y and has gone to bell reducers. If you get an opportunity to read the article that Dennis Laguerre wrote on gated Ys, or even better, if you can sit and listen to them for like 20 minutes, anything longer than that, and your head's going to hurt, of why not using the gated Y on residential stuff. Essentially, the gated Y was designed for wildland firefighting, not for structure fires. We're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Unless everything is identical, you are going to kick the other line's butt whenever I shut that line down. So I'm not a fan of the gated Y. We went to bell reducers. But we still had companies that were coming up short on their stretches. And I don't know how to fix this. We've got these long lines, but people are scared to stretch the long lines. Mostly because they didn't want to learn how to reload these. So what do? Well, We finally got Nashville to buy some smoothbore nozzles, and we started running smoothbores on our crosslays. Probably half the companies, surprisingly enough, spent their own money and bought Elkhart breakaway fog nozzles that they put on the front bumper line, so that way you could run smoothbore or fog. But those two nozzles gave us the option of extending that stretch if we stretch short, right? So I think our fire engines are the most diverse they've been ever. If you look at a Nashville engine from the front to the back, we have options for everything. So most everybody, I would say, in the American fire service, although again it's changing, runs 100 feet in their front bumper line. We're running 150 in our front bumper line. So it's 100-foot accordion, flat load, scorpion, however you want to call it. The last 50 feet is loaded in a donut, and it's two different colors. So like the last I looked at engine 32, the scorpion load is all white and the donut roll is red. It's pre-set up as a 150-foot line, smoothbore nozzle. We've got a lot of houses that sit 25 feet off the street, 2-story homes. 150 hose is going to be plenty. I know this class is about not stretching short, how to overcome that. But if you know anything about engine work, having too much hose is almost as bad as not having enough hose. Oscar Armstrong, who died in Cincinnati, that was one of the biggest issues they had, was lines were too long, too much line was too many kinks was not enough GPMs. So we were like, hey, let's do something different. So we've got our 150, but if you only needed 100, it's a simple disconnect of the donut roll. We keep a spare fog nozzle in that compartment so you can make a car fire line for the interstate or something like that. 150 feet of hose is a lot to mess with on I-24 or I-85 or whatever it is down here. So 100 or 150, 200 on crosslay number 1, 250 on crosslay number 2, 300 on our 2.5, 400 on our long line. It's a wide variety, right? What about our break and take options? Well, I can break my whole leader line bundle, take it up to where I'm at, stretch my 2.5, and connect those together, and now have a 700-foot line. So it's the most diverse that we've ever had, but we still are coming up short. So we created bundles. These are the bundles that we use to overcome our short stretches. The yellow is 1 3/4, 100 feet, smoothbore nozzle. It's a simple accordion, right? We call it the Wichita bundle. Wichita, Kansas is the first people I saw do this with the marks or the shortcuts, the cheaters up here in the front for your deployment. So y'all will learn a lot over the next couple of days. And correct me on because you don't say accordion forward, you say forward advance, right? So if I was going to do that, I'm 35 feet from my entry point or more. I lay this bundle down. It's got 2 straps on it. I pop my straps off, nozzle and coupling, forward advance. If I come around the corner of the back of the building and I'm right there at my entry point, I lay it down, my straps come off, I grab the 2 loops and walk away. So it gives me that same advance or whatever. Those are my marks, my road marks that give me that option. The green hose is what we set up for our high-rise bundles, actually. But we've used them to extend our 2.5s and all that stuff. It's 2 1/4-inch hose. Who was I talking to last night? Me and Scott, I think we're downstairs talking about. He said in Gwinnett they're running the Denver load for your high-rise bundles, right? So this goes with, if you don't like what's out there, find something that works for you. I went to the high-rise conferences in Pensacola 5 or 6 times. I didn't like this about the Denver load. I didn't like this about the New York load. We had to come up with something. So we created the Music City fold, as we call it, which is essentially a single stack New York fold. In the last 1.5 years, we've made like 18 high-rise fires, and this has been used on every one of them. Flawless operations on the hose deployment. We had some issues with standpipe connections, but we're fixing that. We've used this to extend lines. So these are our options to extend those lines. We run increasers in the Our pipeman, our nozzle firefighter, when they come in the morning, is supposed to put an increaser in their pocket. So if we stretch a 2.5 and we're short, we can increase that line, the length of that line, easy. So these are our options. These are what work best for us. We've already talked about break and takes, right? Taking what you need and extending that hose line, making it as long as you want or making it as short as you want. For the companies that are still running gated wise, if I stretch this 400-foot line and we get up there and fire attack command, whoever it is, says, hey, I want a second line. I want to tie into this Y. I take my bundle, right? My Wichita bundle. What if you don't have a Wichita bundle? I take my nozzle stack on my crosslay. I take what I need. I break it and extend it. So everything that we're running on our engines is about giving us options to make our lines longer if we need. Rope stretches and coupling drops. This is a drill we ran. The last shift I worked on, A shift, we made a fire in this building. This was like 4 days later. We come on B shift and ran this quick drill. It didn't go off. I think I forgot to put an animation with it. Maybe not. Simple drill. They carried their bundle up, Wichita bundle, popped the straps off, and just lowered a coupling to our front bumper line that we had already deployed. So 150-foot bumper line, nozzle came off, simple coupling drop, and connected it from there. If we could have got the engine closer, hey, we could have stretched our 200-foot crosslay, broke it in the middle, carried our bundle up. If Scott's my captain, I heard a guy over here say, if I'm going into a fire, I want Scott Sanders going with me. I'm in. Let's do it, Scott. Scott can drop a rope for me, hoist that line that I need up, make my connections, and go from there. So options, options, options. So we've got all these options. How do we figure out what line we need? Well, we've got to estimate that stretch. Figuring out what you need is as important as stretching that line. I've already talked about the catastrophe of stretching too much hose that they had in Cincinnati, and we all know what it's like to stretch too little hose. You've seen it or you've been a part of it. So being able to estimate those stretches is as important. Crosslays have took over because we're lazy, because they're convenient, or whatever it is. There's a couple common ways to figure some of these and a couple out of the ordinary ways. I like to use landmarks and all that stuff. Use something that you're familiar with. Parking spots, right? What's the average size of a parking spot? So I've always 20 by 10. That's what I was. 20 foot long, 10 foot wide. So if I come off the engine, I'm on the engine and we pull up, we're trying to see 3 sides of the apartment building. My breezeway is back here from where I stop. Hey, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, there's 5 parking spots. That's at least 50 feet that I have to do. 20 feet to make the turn. I've got to go up. So all that stuff factors in. What's our spans on utility poles? Well, they're a little bit different, obviously, right? But a general rule of thumb is in urban settings, about 100 to 125 feet apart. In rural settings, they can get up to as much as 300 feet apart, and that's what most of those are. But I'm a simple equation guy, right? So I look at my setback. How far is it from me to the front door? The width of the building plus the depth of the building, or length plus width, and then elevation, however much I need. For the fires on the second floor, I'm going to add an extra section for that elevation. So 50 feet from the engine to the front door, I've got a building that is 50 by 75. Okay, we're talking 125. We don't have any 25-foot sections, so let's call it 150. So I'm at 200. The fire's upstairs. Hey, a 250-foot line, that's what we're stretching, bread and butter, and we go from there. Find something simple that works for you. Guys, you've been lying to your wives and girlfriends for years. Don't say, I can look at that and I know exactly what it is. This is not 6 inches. So find something that you know and use it. What about estimating stretches on high rises? So I've kind of become a nerd for high rise stuff. Kind of that same equation. I'm looking at how do I make this work. So from the standpipe on the floor below, because that's where our connections generally are, to the fire floor is one section. I need one section for the fire department, So I've got to figure out what that span is from the stairway to that fire apartment. Well, we got reports of a fire in 1104. We're hooking up on 10. Scott's a truck boss. He works on truck 5, right? So I say, hey, Scott, go down on floor 10 and find 1004 for me. Those floors generally mirror each other. Scott comes back and says, hey, Chunk, it's 6 doors down on the right. I think it's 150 feet. Okay, I need 250 feet for my stretch. Simple as I can make it. Take advantage of all those options that you possibly can to make your job easier. So we've talked about all this stuff, and I want to leave you with this. Take pride in what you do. Which one of these fire companies do you want coming to your fire? Which one of these fire companies took time to make sure that it was loaded right? I know we've already seen Kentlands. Hey, I'll tell you, the engine on the right is a Nashville fire engine. Engine 15 on my shift, before I was on the shift, when B shift was a turd, when this happened, fire in the middle of the night, it was raining, it was cold, they was ready to get back in bed. They loaded it on there and said, C shift will figure it out. C shift came in, flipped it up. That's who took this picture, C shift, and said, what in the world? B shift will fix it when they come back in, and left it for 24 hours. The A shift captain came in, who ended up being my captain on truck 26, said no, pulled it off, reloaded it all, and took pride in their ride. If I pull up next to your fire engine at the traffic light, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at your hose bed, I'm looking at your crosslays and all that stuff. I might not ever interact with your fire company, but there's people who are looking at your piece of equipment and saying, man, does Gwinnett Truck 5 take pride in what they got? What does it look like? Man, did you see that hose that's on the back of Engine 40? Man, it's trash. Man, I hope we don't get in our house catch on fire. I don't want them to come. Take pride in everything that you have. So here we are finishing up. Long lines work for everybody. I hope that you got that in this class. Get out and find out what you need. There's a bunch of different ways to achieve this. The best is a relevant term. What works in Live Oak might not work in Nashville. What works in Nashville might not work in Dalton, so on and so on. Build your playbook. Have a plan and make it work. Estimating your stretch must be a top tier for your company. You have to be good at that. Stretch often. These are easy skills to lose. We loaded these on our engines, and we had companies that went months, years without stretching the leader lines, and then couldn't deploy them. So we had to retrain. Take advantage and stretch every opportunity you get. We've talked a lot the last however many hours we've been in here about using your time properly, taking advantage of your day, and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to leave you with 2 videos that I listen to on my way into work. When I turn on to Andrew Jackson Parkway, I turn the radio off on my vehicle. I'm not listening to your podcast. Sorry, dog. Turn it off. I pull up my phone and I watch these 2 videos that I've got saved in my phone. So here's the first one. I grew up a Cowboys fan. I know the Cowboys are trash. Sorry, you folks from Texas, but the Cowboys are trash. But you gotta love some prime time. Every morning I go to work, I listen to this. It's like I need to get a recording of Raymond to listen to and add that to a 3-video stack that I can listen to. My captain always calls it pre-gaming. He says, boy, you was pre-gaming today, wouldn't you? That's exactly what I'm doing watching these videos. I think there's 1 or 2 more slides in here real quick. Find something or someone who inspires you. Find your senior men we talked about at the beginning. All these instructors have talked about. These are some of the groups that I travel and teach with. On the far right is my family. My wife, who allowed me to come and be a part of this, who's in the fire service herself. My son, 19 months old, love that boy to death. Hey, my dog, Jackson, I'm keeping him. He's the last person voted off the island before everybody else. For those of you that are prayers, which I hope is everybody, I told Shane I was going to do this. We just found out last week my wife's pregnant. We're expecting our second, So pray for my second that's coming. We don't know boy or girl yet. We're just calling it Obi right now, Obadiah. So find something that inspires you. Influence, right? Surround yourself with people that influence you. Accountability is what this is about. Hold yourself accountable. Find somebody that'll hold you accountable. Thank y'all so much for your time. I hope you got something out of this. I'll be around all week.